Can y'all hear me? If you can, say something in the chat. Oh, so you can hear me. Is that what you're saying? Oh, okay, good. I got it. I'm trying to text John and okay, so if y'all are here, thank you for being here. John is having technical difficulties and I'm sure he's working it out. Okay, so instead of chatting about bicycles, why don't we just chat about and then when he comes in, we'll get started with the Shaft theme, music theme, and what we're talking about. So, which is today going to be, okay, Joe, see you later. Today we're going to talk about steps 6 and 7. And in a secular way, because we all know what the traditional way is. Hopefully, if you're here, we're entirely ready to have God remove all our shortcomings and our character defects. What it was. And I like to think of it as be entirely ready to acknowledge our strength and release our personal shortcomings. So a lot of this has to do with we've made the list, we've done our 4th step, we've done our 5th step, and now it's like, okay, so are we really ready to change? And then step 7 is we're going to change. So it's kind of like, where are the parts of us that are resisting this step? And I'm going to refer to one of my favorite books on this, which is called The Alternative 12 Steps, A Secular Guide to Recovery by Martha Cleveland and Arliss G. So I'm going to read a little bit about that. And thank y'all all for being here. Joe, I'm sorry you can't stay. Hey, Bubbles. And so here we go. Time and time again, we've asked ourselves, what's the matter with me? Don't I want to change? And then we say, of course I do. I want my life to be better. But clearly our actions haven't changed. So we don't really, because our actions and our wants aren't linking up. Because I always wanted to only have 3 drinks. And that never happened. So what I said and what I did were 2 different things. And I was completely out of tune with my own personal integrity, by the time I decided to come in here. And I was totally conflicted. And there was always the struggle of the 51% that wanted to be sober, fighting with the other half of me that was always going to win. And so I was just completely conflicted, and I didn't think I had any power or any strength. And I finally realized that the alcohol was always going to win. In fighting, just the fight itself was giving more power to. So I was focusing on what I didn't want, which was to not drink. So I would say, I'm not going to drink today. Instead of affirming what I did want, I want to be not in shame and guilt. I want to take it one moment at a time without reaching for the drink. And so I was constantly affirming what I didn't want instead of affirming the strong side of me that did want to get sober and not drink again and not go in that vicious cycle of being drunk, being ashamed, doing stupid shit, and feeling horrible. So I have learned over time that just saying I'm not going to do something is a guarantee that I am going to do it. It's like, don't think of an elephant. So there's another way to work it, I think, that works with our conscious and subconscious. And this passage about step 6 in this book really helped me to get clear what it was. So basically, we resist change because it's hard to change than to stay the same. First, there's the fear of losing predictability and security of the unknown, because we've always done what we've always done, and we've always used our coping skills, which they call in traditional AA character defects, which I don't think, that's like saying we're defective because there's a perfection out there that is walking the planet that we're trying to be. And I don't believe that. I think we're all human.
Hello. I'm
Hey,
in here now. I'm so sorry. All right.
looks mad.
So I believe that we're live, and pretty soon you will see me on camera. And I am so sorry. This is kind of a weird thing that happened here. We were all ready to go, and all of a sudden my camera stopped working. I couldn't connect to StreamYard, but I'm here now. And I'm a little bit flustered because things weren't going as planned. So anyway, here we are. I hope that Mary was able to keep you entertained. Oh, there I am so far anyway. All right. Mary, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I don't know. I guess I'll survive.
It's fine. We didn't get to hear the Shaft theme music. That's the only problem.
No, we didn't hear the theme music, and so here we are. Here we are. We're here to talk about step 6 and 7. And I guess before I go any further, I should start with a disclaimer I always like to give, that, this is just how I understand these things to this day. I'm not suggesting that anybody else needs to do these steps or believe these steps in the way that I am going to be talking about them today. My thoughts on these have certainly evolved over a period of time. I think they're interesting to talk about. I think that they describe a process that pretty much everybody in recovery goes through, regardless of what kind of a program you might follow. I think that the way that they're described in the big book doesn't necessarily apply to how most people would express their experience with these, certainly not the way that I would express it. But why don't we start, Mary?
Yes. I kind of already did.
Did you? What have you talked about thus far?
Thus far, I talked about just step 6.
Okay.
And I was reading from A Secular Approach Guide to Recovery, The Alternative 12 Steps by Martha Cleveland and Arliss G.
Mm-hmm.
And basically just talked about what 6 means to me and the way I interpret it, and how that's different from the way the traditional step is written.
Right. Yeah. Same here. I don't know, honestly, if I ever actually experienced the step as it is written in the big book. I may have given some lip service to it during meetings, which I think that probably most people do in AA. There's very little written about the steps in the original text, Alcoholics Anonymous. I think there's a paragraph or two. And my sponsor didn't have me do a whole lot with these steps, because why would he? God does all the work, doesn't he? But when I think back about my recovery and how I understand recovery today, these were actually this is actually a period of my life where um, I was very excited about making some positive change. And I was, for the first time, able to look forward to my life rather than looking back like the rest of the steps had us do. I know I at this point I have maintained abstinence and was comfortable with that. I had a good support group to support my sobriety, and now I was learning about myself and some things that I wanted to change or in my life to have some further stability. And so this just describes for me that period of time when I ventured out to change in ways that would require resources outside of AA and what I had been experiencing thus far. So, for example, this is when I one of my first objectives, I think, without really clearly understanding it, but was to address my emotional and mental well being. So I started, I think I told you last week, I started therapy with a social worker. And then at this point, I moved on to a psychologist and started attending group therapy. And so I was working on things like self esteem issues and also focusing on other health issues. Like I quit smoking. My therapist, as a way to help me with my self esteem, helped me quit smoking. So I see that now as part of steps 6 and 7. This is me recognizing that there were things about me that I wanted to change to live a more fulfilling life. And I started taking concrete action to do that. And I did that in all kinds of different areas of my life and still to this day do that.
Awesome. And quitting smoking is a big deal.
Yeah,
So
it was.
kudos to that. That's a lot to take on.
Yeah, he was a great doctor, and actually, what was so interesting about that is I I think, yeah, what motivated me to go to that was I had this job where people were telling me I had problem with self-esteem. So I wanted to work on that. So I started this group therapy, and one of the ways that he wanted to help build my self-esteem was for me to stop doing something that was so destructive, smoking, and to
Yeah,
maybe feel good about myself for doing that. And so he helped me through that process of quitting. And it was great. And it really did a lot for my self-esteem and got me doing other things to improve it as well.
right. Gotcha. Um,
So,
I did it, in the beginning, of course, I did it the traditional way because I was more traditional back then. And so step 6 was like asking God to remove all our defects of character, sort of like believing that a magic wand is going to just come out and wave over me and I'm going to be relieved of all this, which is, a lot of rituals do that for people to begin anew. And that in that ritual itself, it might set up a place where your conscious and unconscious minds come together and decide they're going to just release the old habits. But, I feel like character defects are tools that I use as defense mechanisms to feel safe walking around in the world interacting with people. And if I don't have the justifiable anger, or if I don't have the, you know, judgments or whatever it is I'm using, quote unquote, old tools, that who would I be if I didn't have that? Because I've had them for so long and they've worked and they're like an old jacket you don't want to get rid of. It's like, who would I be if I wasn't all those things? But I'm so ready still to this day to learn new things and to be a new person and to have fresh thoughts and fresh behaviors that I'm ready, and then 7 is about really committing to that. But I think through 6, it's also about not just talking about our low self-esteem or all the stuff that's not good. What about all our strengths? Focusing on our strengths. If I don't want to do this, what is it I do want to do? So instead of saying I don't want to take that drink, say I'm staying sober today. Just affirm the positive and figure out what my, in this book they call it abiding strength is. Where is the strength within me, and get that to sync up in a conscious way to change my behaviors, because I can read about swimming all day long, but until I get into the pool and start doing it, that's how I learn. And so it's about being open to changing my behaviors. But first, I got to figure out which ones are the ones I want to change. And I think that's what six is kind of saying. Are you really ready now that you've looked at all these old defense mechanisms? Are you really ready to let go of them? Kind of conscious
Right.
decision.
I like that way of looking at it. Dale's mentioning something called the 12 Sarcastic Steps. I think I've heard of that, but I've never really
Oh,
read
good. I
them.
want to hear about this. What is it?
Well, he's got a couple things about it. He says, from the 12 Sarcastic Steps, step 6, I've been entirely ready for God to do all this heavy lifting for a long time. So far, the needle hasn't budged. I guess I have to do it myself, which is always what I always kind of joke about anytime I talk about this step is like whenever I was in an AA meeting and these steps came up for conversation, usually people would say something like, well, I asked God to remove my character defects, but they're really not yet removed. And it's like, nobody ever had their character defects removed. And it's like, I wonder why. But so he says that. And then he says also in step 7, humbly ask, you mean like groveling? Your God
Right.
seems a bit needy. Are shortcomings the opposite of longcomings? Oh boy. Then Bobbert says for Bobbert, step 6 is where I implement the plan I came up with, and in steps 4 and 7 is understanding the result of the plan. That is so good. I kind of that's how I see it now. I don't know if I did at the time, but I do now see that I reached the point in my recovery, like I said, where I was ready to venture out and build the life that I wanted to have. And I didn't have a really good firm plan, but I started tackling little pieces of it one by one to get to have a little bit more stability in my life. And it was built upon what I learned about myself previously. So all the past experience I had before this was all reflection, looking back on my life and how I reacted to life. And now is my chance to build something new. It's really a positive and optimistic
Yeah.
way of experiencing it. Not so
Yes.
much like, "Oh, I'm so bad. Character
Right.
defects, God, take them
Yes.
away from me. I'm a horrible person." It wasn't
Exactly.
like that at all, and I don't think that's the way anybody really experiences it. If you're in recovery, you do get to a point where I'm gonna build a life that I want to live,
Yeah.
and I
Like
think
I'm
that's what
sick
this
and
is about.
tired of being sick and tired.
Yes.
And then I think 7 is about are you really? And
Right.
committing to that. And 7, in traditional, they do like 7-step prayer and get on your knees and they make a commitment. And in Buddhism, they do the compassionate heart thing. And I think it's just affirming, however you want to do it, affirming what you are committed to. And, if you don't want the life you've had, you're committed to this new way of living, just like really committed to it.
Right.
And I just don't understand. For me personally, it doesn't work to just let, an outside interventionist God take it away from me. But I think in that that language, part of it is just you're giving up. You're just giving up subconsciously and you're sinking your consciousness with just saying, I'm gonna let it be gone. So and then people say, well, if I didn't do it, of course God did it. And I never
Right.
have understood that. I couldn't do it, so God did it. I wouldn't be here if God didn't do it. I don't understand that because I'm just more of a humanist. So that doesn't, I don't understand that concept personally, but I know it works for a lot of people.
Right. Right. Um, and I'm just losing my train of thought now.
So you were talking about, sorry.
It's all right. I this happens to me sometimes, and I'm just a little bit thrown off because of my experience this
Yeah.
morning.
Yeah. It must have
Um,
been frustrating when you were trying to get back in. That happened to me the
oh
first day I
God.
was on here and I was trying to,
Yeah.
I said, I'm Mary, I'm an alcoholic, and then click, it was gone.
Yeah, I don't know what happened. It was just so weird. It's like, before we went live, there was 2 of me on here and it was driving me crazy. So I had to get it off. So I restarted my computer and it takes forever for my freaking computer to restart and it wouldn't work. So I had to do it a second time anyway. So here I am.
That's all right.
But
You're here now.
but also um thinking, oh yeah, I know what I was thinking about. Jeffrey Munn.
Hmm.
He writes about this. And I like the way he writes about this because he's talking about not necessarily removing bad character traits, but building more healthy, positive character traits.
Exactly.
And he lists some that he suggests, as possible as examples of what people might want to add to their life. And I like that for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's much easier to add something to your life than it is to remove something.
Exactly.
And secondly, it's a more of a positive view of the process than having some bad part of you taken out and exercised.
Yes.
It's much better to think about, I have the ability to make some positive change, and these are the changes that I want to make.
And that I'm stronger than I think I am.
Yeah. Yeah. And probably only Mary because I've been sober for a while now. Um, that the way my take on these principles now, because there are principles that underlie this, but my take on this now is that I work on this on a case by case basis. So if I'm if I recognize that I'm engaging in a behavior that is causing me a problem now, then I will, you know, recognize that I need to make a change and work on that and try to understand, I guess, what the hell's going on with me and what kind of a change do I need to make, which is still, a positive thing. It's like, okay, this is what was, but now I'm looking forward to what will be. And I can still stop and make plans to this day of anything that I want to change and seek help from people to help me do that. So,
Yes, and I think that's why meetings are so important for me, that to stay on track with the path that I committed to, which is not drinking. So it reaffirms instead of saying I'm not going to drink, like don't think of an elephant. You're going to think of an elephant. So I want to be in places where I'm affirming what I do want.
right.
So when I'm
Yeah.
standing in front of the refrigerator and I know that there's like a sweet roll in there that I don't want to eat, like I have to, at that moment, I have to pause and say, this is what I'm committed to. And I really believe in affirmations. They work for me. And so I affirm in the morning when I'm quiet with my first cup of coffee what I'm committed to. And then I keep reaffirming that when I need to, so that I can redirect myself when needed. And I think that's how AA works, is that we go to meetings to get redirected and to affirm what it is we do want.
Pete mentions that too. Positive affirmations help him as well. And Tim also says the same, that he thanks you for affirming that I'm stronger than I think I am. So yeah,
Oh,
that is good. I don't know if I have necessarily practiced that, but I think it would probably be a good idea for me to do that when I think about, if I'm ever getting into a negative space. I have a lot of negative self-talk, you
yes.
know, which
Yes.
which sends me down a spiral of despair and
Right.
depression
And
and all
horrible
that.
feelings.
Yes, it does, and when you start going down that road, it's really hard to kind of get yourself, to recognize where you are in reality. So,
Right.
a positive affirmation is a good way of recognizing the reality of the fact. It's like, these thoughts that I'm having, are they really true? And what is the truth? And like what you said, I'm stronger than I think I am.
Yeah.
That is true.
And also, what rabbit hole of thought wheel am I in? And
Right.
where am I? So I always think to myself, be where my feet are. So right now, is the thing that I'm rabbit holing about happening? No.
Mhm.
And then I reaffirm where I'm at, what I see, what I hear, what I feel, what I smell, what I taste. I try to walk outside barefoot. I'll do anything to sort of get into the present moment. And then I was taught a long time ago, you get what you focus on. And so what
Mm.
are you focusing on? And your life really is a direct relation to what you're focusing on and what you commit to and your daily habits.
Right. Yeah, that's another good, thing. And you remind me of, what Jackie would sometimes talk about, is the power of pausing and, stopping whatever it is that you might be focused on and redirecting your focus to something more
Yeah.
constructive and helpful.
And that's when
Um,
they say call a friend so you can redirect yourself and get the friend to talk you out of whatever you self-sabotage you feel like you're about to do.
yep.
And that's why reaching out is so important, because when you're in your own head trying to fight that battle, for me, it's a losing battle.
Yeah.
And with alcohol, it is always gonna win if I get on that level with it. It will
Yeah.
win, and I really
Yeah.
like what Dale says here. I don't think my defects were just removed by my positive thinking and actions, they were displaced.
Displaced.
Right? Because I don't think you can be a human being and not have whatever is referred to as character defects. I don't know a
Right.
single human being walking the planet that doesn't have character, quote, unquote, "defects." Maybe there are people, but if anybody knows what that looks like, let me know.
Right. Yeah, I know. I think that maybe it might have been helpful for me at one time to think about traits that I had or the ways that I would behave. I don't so much now. I don't really see myself anymore as a particular personality type or whatever, but I do see myself in specific situations that I don't handle as well as I would have liked to. And it's not because I was a certain way, I might have behaved a certain way, but that doesn't mean I am that way or whatever. But I just kind of look at, why was I reacting that way and what would be a better way to react? And I tell you, man, it happens a lot. It happened this week actually, at work. I was just so I don't know what it was, Mary. I know what it was. I was really frustrated. I have a new employee starting and it was really hard getting her set up. And I was just so stressed out and frustrated, and that stress and frustration was coming out of me in a really negative way to people that were trying to talk to me about other things. I was just not a pleasant guy to be around. And I found myself during the day, having to apologize for being that way.
Right, right.
But yeah, that would have been a great time for me just to fricking step away,
Mhm.
and
Pause.
kind of disengage and
Mhm.
pause and think about things a little bit differently, maybe think about the other people. But yeah, I wasn't handling the situation well at all. I mean, it was a shame, and you can't. I guess I can always go, start fresh and go back and, let people know that I'm sorry for being a jerk, but this is what happened. That's all I can do is just be honest about when I do
Yeah,
get that way.
and then sometimes I find when I go back and apologize, nobody noticed.
That's true
Like, I
too.
thought I was being a horrible jerk because I felt it in my head, and
Yeah,
you know, they didn't really feel that or get that, so sometimes I'm really hard on myself
that's true
more
too.
than
I
other
find
people would
same
be.
here. Same
But work
here.
situations, I had the same thing this week. It was just, I had to just step back and go, "Is it really worth the fight?" "Can I
Mhm.
just let this go?" And, "Do I really wanna go into this with this person, or can I just let it be the way it is?" And it always involves me keeping my mouth shut. And when I get into sticky situations, it's because I didn't.
Mhm. Well, Bobbert says isn't a positive affirmation or form prayer. It could be, I suppose. I have heard of atheists who do pray and consider it more like an affirmation.
Yeah, or
I
yeah,
use, for example, the Serenity Prayer, and that's kind of an affirmation, and I do use that. I can't help it. It's just something that I like it,
it's
and I use it.
ingrained. It's
Yeah, it's
ingrained.
ingrained in me, and it
Yep.
kind of calms me down, and it
Yeah,
helps me kind of focus on some positive things, and it is kind of a form of a affirmation.
yeah. I think prayers I personally think that when I pray, nobody's listening but me.
Yeah.
And I think it's a form of putting my intention into the world of what I do want
Hmm.
and how I do want the strength to do whatever it is I'm saying. And it's like just redirecting, kind of remembering the peaceful place within myself. And
Right.
I memorized some affirmations a long time ago that just come to me when I need it. And a lot of the slogans in the AA rooms come to me when I need it to sort of give me strength and to re-center.
Hmm.
Fred
Fred is
H.
quoting, yep, from the proactive 12 steps. And in step 6, I understand how these patterns have been ways of coping with my fears.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
that,
I like the proactive 12 steps. We read those at the meeting sometimes.
yeah, I like him
Mhm.
too. I
Yeah.
think that I like his take on that. And especially, it's really interesting that he's coming from someone who isn't in recovery from addiction. And a lot of the people that he works with aren't in recovery from addiction, but he just uses these steps and the principles within them as a way to help people, affect change in their life,
Mhm.
because that's
Mhm.
how he saw it. He thought this is a beautiful way to experience and express change,
Mhm.
and helping people make changes in their life. He has a really good take on that.
So
Feel free to call in, by the way, 844-899-8278. John says he starts the Serenity Prayer with I want rather than God grant, which is a
mhm.
nice way of handling that as
Yeah,
well.
that is a nice way. I just leave off the God and say grant.
Yeah.
Um,
Something else I was thinking about today as I was kind of preparing, and forgive me, everybody, my thoughts are really jambled. I was kind of organized, coming into this thing today, and then all of a sudden everything fell apart. Anyway,
you're doing good. Go,
but
just go.
but one thing I was thinking about is, okay, first of all, um, in my past AA life, when we would be doing these steps, the big book says hardly anything about them at all. But Bill Wilson did write about them in the 12 steps and 12 traditions, 12 and 12. But and I thought that when if I remember right, it was all about instincts run wild, that we take our instincts to um, ridiculous extents and all this kind of stuff. And it would make for interesting conversation, I suppose. But thinking back on it and looking at and thinking about that now, it didn't really help me that much to think that way. Um, because I just think that I don't think that I was taking things to the extreme necessarily all the time as a part of my personality. I think that maybe sometimes, maybe during my drinking, maybe I was kind of like that, but for the most part, I was just a person just trying my best to get by in the world, and I don't know, I just didn't find that so helpful, and not the way that I think about it today anyway.
Yeah. That's why change is good because we change the way we think about things
Mhm.
and we change the way we react to our own thoughts. And I think 6 is really about saying, yes, we can change and actually believing that we can change. And,
Yes.
the good news about talking to other alcoholics that aren't drinking, we see that they did change and they aren't drinking. And that kind of gives me hope.
Mhm.
I wish
So
someone would call in.
yes, it's always helpful. But okay, so if you were working with someone today, Mary,
Yes.
and they said, "I want to go through these steps," how would you help them with this?
Well, first I'd ask them where they're at, like in their, um, what form of steps do they want to do? That's what I would say first and figure out how they like their 12 steps. It's like, how do you take your coffee? With sugar, with cream, none, decaf, figure out which kind of coffee they want. And then I would research it if I didn't know anything about it. And then I would go there. It's just a template. It's
Yeah, it
not like I
is.
have to, it's like I'm a facilitator.
Right.
I don't have to believe the way they believe.
Right.
I can just do the template because there's a principle behind all of them that's sort of a theme.
Yep.
And it's really just about getting myself ready to make a change and believing it's possible and then being committed to change and then doing the habits that help me not drink and sort of using all the tools and talking about what the tools are. And it's really a simple process. And I've had talked to a lot of people that said people in their home group said, can't take you through the steps if you don't believe in God. I wouldn't know how to do that. And there's so many ways to do it. And there's so many templates for it that all you got to do is a little Google, Dr. Google, and you will find it. And then just go with it.
Yeah.
Because the principle is about changing. We can't be a changed person unless we're willing to change. And I think that's what 6 and 7 is about. Is really
Yeah.
committing to I'm going to be open to this new way of life because I need to live a different way. This I'm sick and tired of being sick and tired. This shit isn't working. So I'm going to try to lessen my resistance and go with the flow on this and see what happens.
We do have a caller from I think Manitoba, Canada.
Uh,
Hello.
uh, Hello. Hi. Colin F. at Manitoba, Canada.
Yes,
And yeah, you're talking about steps 6 and 7.
indeed.
And yeah, I remember when I started my recovery, I had no clue as an atheist how I would ever have to or be able to do these steps. Eh? And
Right.
like personally, I come to use curiosity as a higher power. So for me, whenever I facing with a situation where I want to do something different, I just stop. I use my higher power. I try and figure out what can I do different. I know what I'm going to do. I know what I want to do, and that doesn't work. What can I do differently this time around? And then the second part, the 7 is actually doing it, which
Right.
is a lot harder than it sounds.
Yes.
So that's kind of how I use steps 6 and 7 on a regular basis. So I'm the better for it.
Thank
So
you.
that's just my 2 cents.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I love that. I love the idea of being curious and asking yourself about, gosh, what is there some other way of doing that? And I think that that's probably how a lot of us experience this. We I just really see these as really positive things that we're thinking about changing for the better. And we are more aware, I guess, of how we react to things when we're sober, especially in the beginning. And stopping to think about how might I have been doing this otherwise is a good way of doing it. I like that idea of curiosity. It reminds me also of something in Jeffrey Munn's book. I don't know if you've read that, but he talks about skepticism as something as a positive trait. And
Mhm.
yeah, and it's kind of funny because I think of the word skeptic or skepticism, and I might not really think of it as a something that's really helpful to me or whatever, but he does describe it in a way that is kind of like as our caller mentioned, as kind of a curiosity,
Mhm.
to think things through.
Yeah.
So thank
Not
you
to
for
just
calling.
yeah, not to discount something just because you don't think it'll work.
Right.
But it's
Right.
really hard to change and to make that positive choice when you're alone with yourself in that moment. You know, you really need to rely on your strengths as best you can
Yep.
to to make the positive choice. And the more you make the positive choice, like anything else, the easier it gets.
We have
'Cause you
another caller,
oh, good.
and I'm pretty sure that this is Al from Vero Beach. Hello, caller from Stuart, Florida.
Hey, hey, John,
I knew it.
Al from Vero.
I knew it.
Hey,
How
buddy.
did you know that?
Hey, man. This. Thanks, Barry. This program is just fantastic. It tops my entire week off.
Are you
I mean,
serious?
it's unbelievable the stuff I'm hearing.
Even when I
dead
screw up like
serious.
today, I mean, this is a total screw up. I was like, what, 20 minutes late getting here or whatever?
That's all right. We managed.
Now,
All right.
John, did
Yes.
you actually say a prayer or not?
I did. What's on your mind? What's on your mind?
Okay. I have to express some really appreciation for the program today. But all week, I heard your interview this week, where you were interviewed, I should say.
Yeah.
Then I heard how to handle AA as an atheist, a replay on Beyond Belief.
Yeah.
I'm going. It's getting better. It's
Really?
getting better. I know it. I'm just charged up from the whole week. It was just fantastic, and a lot of it for Beyond Belief sobriety. I'm telling you, it's good stuff.
Oh,
And
wow.
I also heard a new thing. I heard Joe C. on something called Recovery Speakers. I don't know if you've heard of that or
Boy, I have to
listen
check
to
it
or
out.
whatever.
I have to check that out. Is it a podcast?
Joe C. Yeah,
Okay.
it is Joe C. It's audio. You can get it. I got it on YouTube or whatever. But he did a fantastic job for about an hour and a half. Everything I heard this week was positive secular sobriety.
Good.
And to me, that's just wonderful stuff. And 6 and 7, back to the good old staying sober without God. Jeffrey Munn, if you want to find a Zoom group that's doing a step meeting on the secular steps for Jeffrey Munn's book. It's the Stonehenge group in England.
Mm-hmm.
If you can take those really polite English
Right.
They're just unbelievably polite. None of the stuff we scream and shout about.
So when
But,
is the
just a
Stonehenge?
fantastic
What time is the Stonehenge group?
Stonehenge. It's Eastern Daylight Time. I can give you here is 1 o'clock.
Okay.
In England, I think that's about 5 hours later or whatever.
And
I
what
don't
day?
have the specifics in front. Wednesday
Okay.
at 1 p.m.
Great. Thank
And
you.
it's a great step meeting for. They follow the Staying Sober Without God book,
God.
Jeffrey
Yeah.
Munn. Yeah.
Great. Thanks
Just
for
all good
that.
stuff. I'm still charged up.
Yeah.
Okay. I just the way it's written in the book. Hey, I'm a lifetime atheist. There's no possible way I can do the God and Him bit for 6 and 7, and cultivating this. Mary came on with an alternative book, just wonderful again. And I love Jeffrey Munn's book, but I'm babbling on and on. But I'm high on secular AA.
Cool.
What can I tell you?
Well, I appreciate that. Thank you so much for calling and listening to that interview I did and the podcast about how to be an atheist in AA. Sometimes I wonder about some of the stuff I put out. It's like, oh my God, that one podcast was like recorded like 2 years ago. And I'm like, do
It
I
was
even
really
believe
good.
that shit anymore?
John, it was so good. I listened to it this week. It was.
Did you?
Yeah, it was good.
Thank you.
And who was the guy you did that with? I
That
can't
was
remember.
Ben B
Okay, right.
from well, he lives in Omaha now. He used to live in Lincoln. And I used to do a lot of stuff with him early on. And we just did that episode. It was a different podcast I was doing at the time when I was trying to get away from I was trying to do more than just AA and stuff like that.
Right.
But
But it was a
yeah.
nice conversation. It was just a very casual conversation, but it was really informative.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so the one you did this week.
Just some.
Go ahead.
Al?
Go, Joe.
Just the suggestions were so good for the atheists. I came in a little different, John. I came in. I didn't hide my atheism. I was, like I said, I'm dealing with a bunch of drunks. I'm going to hide something from them. Come on, give me a break. But I did not hide my atheism. I was straightforward. And you know what? Looking back after 38 years, I'm glad I did that. I didn't conform. I was always raising holy hell, I guess. Not really, but expressing my view about it. And some of the suggestions: be yourself at an AA meeting. If nothing else, be yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's enough for me. Thanks. I appreciate you guys a lot.
Thank you. Thank you
Talk
for
to you
so much
later.
for calling.
Bye.
I appreciate it. Oh boy. I
Okay, bye-bye.
love that. I love hearing the good stuff.
So tell me about the podcast that you did earlier this week where you were interviewed.
Oh, okay. Well, it was called The Daily Dose, and it's a husband and wife team. The husband's in recovery, the wife isn't. And so she's kind of like an Al-Anon type. And anyway, they're both great. And they had me on what they call Guest Thursday, where they do like a live stream of interviewing a guest. And she happened to listen to that episode that I just put out about how to be an atheist in AA. So we were kind of talking about that. And I enjoyed the conversation. It was really nice. And I did feel sometimes like I had to be a little cautious. I didn't want to come out as like totally anti AA, but because I had the impression that Dr. Mari, her husband, might not have had the same kind of experiences that I had in AA when I came out as an atheist. Because there are people out there that have this experience where, like, kind of Dale, where they're an atheist from the beginning, the get go, and the group doesn't seem to give them a hard time.
Right.
That wasn't my experience. I had people that were kind of harassing me about shit, so
Yeah.
it was a little bit different. So I kind of stepped around that a little bit and really tried to focus, I guess, on my practical view of things. And we just talked about my experience. So it was fun. I like being on the other side of the microphone like that. It's a nice little kind of a break, to not have to think about. And Frank was there in the room, and that was really nice, Frank. And I think Joe was there and a few others were there too. So, but I talked about the podcast a little bit too, and the community that we have here. And I talked a lot about secular AA too, and
Good.
how it has really grown during COVID. And I think that it's going to be really interesting if we ever get this COVID stuff behind us, and I'm sure someday we will, just how much this is going to change AA. all these people that are learning now about secular AA meetings. I don't know how many of these that there are out there, but there's a lot more meetings now on Zoom than we've ever had before, I know. And there's a lot more people being introduced to a secularly formatted AA meeting than have ever had one before. And when these people start going to their local AA groups, what kind of influence will they have on that? It'll just be interesting to see over time how that happens. But it certainly, COVID has been a boon for people finding secular
Oh
paths to.
God, absolutely.
Yep, sure
The
has.
and I love Zoom meetings. I'll always be on Zoom.
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm starting to like them out now too. I like the Tuesday meeting that we do, and I've been to some smart meetings on Zoom, so I'm kind of getting my feet back into it again. I think that in the beginning, I judged it a little bit too quickly. I was like exhausted from work, and I think that was the big thing. Exhausted from work, jumping on the computer again. I thought, oh God, this sucks. But it's like I think I can get over that now.
Well,
But
I wanna, give a shout out once again to the Tuesday night meeting,
mm,
from this podcast that's at 8 o'clock Eastern Time on
yes.
Tuesdays, and last week when you told your story, I mean, I had never heard the whole thing, and it was very powerful and wonderful, and it was
Oh,
such a good meeting where everybody shared from the heart how they really felt and how they do recovery. It was awesome.
this week we're gonna have Dale talk.
Great.
Yeah, he was on. I think he might have been on two episodes, but he was on one episode for sure. I remember when he was talking about uh, we agnostics specifically, and then I know he was on another. I had him on earlier. I think just talking about his book in general. I think there were two episodes I did with him, but it's been a long time. So I'm looking forward to having him on because I know, just like all of us, that his thoughts and experiences have evolved since I last talked to him.
Yes.
And the things that he's learned about himself and how he applies that to recovery, I'm sure has changed a lot since I last spoke with him. But who knows what he wants to talk about? He's free to talk about whatever he wants to.
Yeah.
But I'm really looking forward to having him speak. So still got to get some more speakers for coming up, and I'll be working on that.
I
There's
have
all
I have a list ready when you're ready. Let me
okay.
know.
Okay. Yeah, I'm trying to stick with just guests that were on previous
Oh,
episodes.
gotcha.
Yeah, and there's quite a few of them, so it's just a matter of reaching out to them, and it's kind of fun to do that because it's like, some of these people I haven't talked to for a long time, and it's kind of fun to reach out, and I will start doing that. There's some people that I am thinking of that I would like to have on, but it'll be interesting to see how this meeting evolves over time and everything. But this live stream is amazing. There's 25 people here. There has been 20 to 25 people here ever since I got on. And wow, I'm so grateful to you. I just love you guys for sticking with this. And it must be it's just great. It's just to have this community and have this experience is something I just never imagined I would ever have. And it's just great to have this. So thank you all for being my community in recovery and being here while we do these streams. Even
Yeah,
if
and
even if things are screwed up in the beginning.
yeah, that it was all I didn't realize I was actually on camera,
I
like,
know. Poor Mary. I'm like, I
I'm
got this
sitting
message
here.
that said, Facebook requires you to go on in 3 minutes or they won't go on. I said, oh my God, I gotta go live. And I'm like, oh my, I hope that Mary realizes she's on camera now.
I didn't. I had no idea. I was just scrolling and then I said, "Can anybody hear me?" But
Ah.
I didn't look at the comments for a long time, and then I realized, "Oh, yeah, they said yes like 5 minutes ago." So then I just started talking about our topic today. But I do wanna say this, so I have a sponsee who, was in a religious group and had severe religious trauma, but then got sober and came and found our home group here in Savannah that was secular, and so she's definitely an atheist, and she told me this week, just out of the blue, how much your podcast, when you and Angela had the podcast, that's where she first learned about secular AA. And she just said how much your podcast helped her. And that's what got her sober. And so you just never know when you put yourself out there and talk about what's true for you in a way of service to the secular world, what is going to help other people. It could be the one thing, the podcast you think stinks, but it could mean a world of good to somebody else. And I just wanted to tell you that because she,
Well,
she's
thank
been
you.
sober 2.5 years now and she's doing great.
Thank you. I might have her as a guest sometime if she would like to come on.
She is an amazing person and a great speaker too. Yeah.
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 So Dale says he's a bit scared. He can be boring, and so can I. So can I. But I think the nervousness is good. I was nervous before last time. I'm nervous, quite honest, before everything I do, like this podcast, this live stream. I always have jitters beforehand, but that energy I think is
Yeah.
probably a good
I do
thing.
too. I always feel like I'm going to throw up starting about the day before and the
Hmm.
night before. I don't sleep well. And then I just have to show up perfectly imperfect. That's how I do it.
Yeah. Well, we didn't have anybody criticize us for doing these
Oh
steps.
yeah, we didn't have too many pot shots.
Because you never know. I mean, I do try to be very careful. Now, like, here's the thing about these steps. Okay. It's like it's a matter of context when I'm going to talk about them. Okay. I'm only going to talk about steps. Hi, guys, Steve. When we're talking about steps. Okay.
Right.
So if I'm talking to someone about their life and they're talking to me about something they're going through, I might be informed by all the stuff that I've learned in AA and smart recovery and talking to people all these years I've been in recovery and talk to them in that way. But if it's someone who wants to specifically talk about a step or principle within a step, that's when I do that based upon where they're coming from.
Right.
So I never see this like as an ideology or anything. It's not like these are these steps that we must take. I don't see it that way. It's
No,
just,
God, no.
and I wouldn't ever talk about them that way. So
No.
it's just me and my experience and you and your
Right.
experience.
And it might work. It might work and it might not. But,
Yeah.
try it. If it doesn't work, do something different.
Hmm. Well, Steve thought it was interesting too to go on the daily dose and hear about the experience and so forth. One thing that was kind of interesting talking to them is we did talk a little bit about trauma, and that has probably been the thing that I have learned the most about the last couple of years. Thank you, Angela. Is this whole idea of how trauma had impacted my becoming an alcoholic,
Yes.
and never really thought about it. And now I'm beginning to understand a little bit better. And we talked about that a little bit, which was kind of cool. So,
Yeah. Trauma response. That's
mm-hmm,
a lot. You hear that a lot these days.
mm-hmm.
Mhm.
And it's good to know because so many people that have had they're dealing with addiction and that I'm talking to and you're talking to and we're all talking to all the time have had some serious trauma in their life, and it's kind of good to kind of keep that in the back of your mind, and that to understand that, and to be careful sometimes, I guess, with the things that we do and say.
Yes.
um
True. Very true. You never know what someone else has gone through.
yeah. Tim says, yes, what can I do different, and practice. Thanks for this insightful discussion. I'm so glad it was insightful. I'm glad. Thank you, Mary. You saved the day. You saved the day. I'll have to go back and watch the first 15 minutes to see what you
No,
were
I'm
talking
never
about.
going to watch the first 15 minutes ever. You just let me know how it
Oh,
goes.
Lord. Oh, Lord. John says that when you speak the truth as you see and feel it, it's not boring.
Agreed.
Yep. There you go, Dale. Just speak your truth as you see it and feel it.
Yeah.
And is always, that's always engaging for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. And what's nice about that meeting too, I like it. I like the interaction at the end of it when people start, sharing and asking questions and so forth. Hey, Mars, there's somebody there. Hi, you might be welcome. I don't know if you've been to this live stream before or not. I don't know if I've seen you, but welcome. Welcome. And I didn't even get to say hello to everybody when we started this thing. But again, Miss Missy, it's good to see you there, and Gilbert and Dale and Frank and everybody. Just really nice. So what else is new that we need to talk about for that's coming up? Any announcements or anything that you can think of that's coming
Um,
up?
no, what about, do we have any idea what we're going to be talking about next
Oh,
Saturday?
yes. Chris M from Southwest Georgia will be our guest.
Oh, good.
Yes.
Yay.
Yes.
That's awesome.
He agreed to come on, and I
I
guess
love Chris M. He's a
Mhm.
great speaker. He has a wonderful story, an all around good guy. And I
He
think you'll
is.
get a lot out of his story.
I'm looking forward to it. I've known him just online for a few years now. I don't even know how long, but I have seen him. evolve and
Totally.
change a
Yes.
lot. Yeah. And it's really cool to see where he's coming from now. And so I am looking forward to this conversation. I was surprised actually that he would be willing to even do it and be on camera and everything. But he is.
He's
And
great, and he
mhm,
really is so easy to listen to and so well spoken. He can articulate his story. It's an incredible story. So be here next week for that. That'll be awesome.
yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
And then we'll just plan for the future of whatever we do here. I do have some interesting guests coming up on the podcast. I've got a couple of books that I'm reading. One kind of similar to another episode I did about a drug dealer who got sober or clean. And then I have this other interesting woman. I'm just reading her memoir now. Um, and she seems pretty fascinating. So I'm really looking forward to that. And there's a couple of others out there that I've got lined up. It's like this coming next couple of weeks, I've got quite a few interviews that I'm going to be doing. So anyway,
Good. I look forward to that.
yeah, I think that I've pretty much covered it. I'm glad that this was helpful for you. I hope it was. If it wasn't, that's okay too. You know, at least it was maybe hopefully entertaining to that anyway. Thank you, Mary, for being here and taking care of things before I could get going. I appreciate that. You never know what's going to happen when you're live. That's the whole thing about it. You know, when you go.
Especially when somebody says, I'll be right back. You just never know.
Oh my God! And I'm glad you stuck in there. I'm so
Well, I'm
glad
glad
you
I
did.
figured out I was actually here. So that's
Yeah,
good.
I'm like, oh my God, do we even do this today? But I'm glad I eventually came on. So let's just go ahead and wrap things up then. I'm going to go ahead and get the disco music
Yeah, let's
going.
get the Shaft theme song.
Oh Lordy, I
All
am
good.
looking forward to a nice Saturday. The weather is beautiful here. I might go outside and do
Yay.
something out there. Bye everyone.
Bye, y'all.